Hi everybody, welcome to the next recording in the learning series. So what we've done is we've covered the three learning theories, classical conditioning, operant conditioning and observational learning. And now what we're going to do is look at how psychologists have applied some of that theory to treat different psychological conditions. So today we're going to look at behavior therapy with classical conditioning. So there's been three main ways that classical conditioning have been used by psychologists to change behavior. And when, I suppose, Ivan Pavlov came up with the classical conditioning, it got psychologists really quite excited because they could see that there was a different way to treat symptoms, and that you could treat this very much from the way that people were behaving and use the theory to give people new ways of behaving. And so they came up with, three key ones: aversion, flooding, and systematic desensitization. Aversion and flooding we will just touch on so you're aware of them, but systematic desensitization is the one that I need you to focus on for this slide, so that when you are asked about applying a model theory of learning, you can talk about how classical conditioning can be used to treat phobias. So the aversion therapy is a very controversial therapy because what it does is it uses classical conditioning by pairing a stimulus, excuse me, by pairing a stimulus with another really undesirable response. So for instance, if you are an alcoholic, you can take a drug that will make you feel nauseous whenever you smell alcohol or taste alcohol. And it does the same. You can do the same for different drugs and cigarettes and things like that. So that people start to associate the alcohol with a nauseous response, and so continually pairing alcohol with nausea will cause the person to learn not to like alcohol anymore. It is a highly controversial therapy because it is a bit of an ethical minefield, and you have to make sure that whoever is doing the treatment is aware that it's not going to be pleasant and it's got some really nasty side effects. This is a clockwork orange. I'm not going to keep this on the slide too much, but basically what you can see here is one of the prisoners who's being experimented on, and he's been injected with a nausea-inducing drug. Every time he watches a violent movie, this is a violent prisoner, and so they inject him with a nausea-inducing drug so that he learns to associate violence with nausea, and they try to rehabilitate that prisoner. And they do to an extent, but if you watch the movie or the book, you can see what happens. But you need to be not scared of scary movies. It's a little bit of a thriller. So, phobias. You've all heard of phobias. They are often caused by classical conditioning. We talked about little Albert and how little Albert didn't really have a fear of white rats until John Watson got to him and started declaring loud noises, and then little Albert became quite scared of rats, but basically anything white and furry, so he developed a phobia. There are tons and tons of phobias, and you can have a little bit of fun having a look at some of these phobias, and some of you might recognize some things that make you feel a little bit squeamish or scary. I particularly like this one, the hippopotomonstrosequipt allophobia, which is can't see that from my head there, fear of long words. So a bit of fun. Some people have got phobias of clowns, and Stephen King's It certainly made that famous. But there's some fears that aren't phobias. They're just fears because it actually makes sense to be scared. If you're out surfing and you see a big fin pop out the water, then it is quite a rational thing to be really scared and to get that very highly anxious feeling. Same with if you were to come face to face with a tarantula, then it makes perfect sense for you to be scared. This is not a phobia. This is a rational response that will probably save your life. So phobias are fears that happen when you're really not under threat, that you have developed a phobia. One of the ways that people are seen to treat phobias is through flooding, which is a fairly aggressive therapy and makes people confront the fears. So if I just move this over here, there we go. So we can see here Professor Gallagher and his controversial technique. He's got this little character here who's scared of the dark and snakes and heights, and he's locked him in a little box up the top of a tower and making sure that he confronts all the fears at once. And hopefully, with this being so super scary, he's never scared of just a snake again, or never scared of heights again, because it's not as scary as what's happening to him right now. Clearly, a highly distressing way to treat things, and again, some ethical concerns with that treatment. So that leads us to systematic desensitization. So don't be put off by the long word. You can break it down and it does make a bit of sense. System, where there is a very clear system to the way that this therapy is, I suppose, explained to clients. And this word here, desensitization, we all know what sensation is. So basically what we do is we take away the sensitivity, okay, in a systematic, logical way. So we reduce phobias by what's called counter conditioning. So the opposite to classical conditioning, it's counter conditioning. And so what therapists have discovered is that, excuse me, I'm just going to move this. Sorry. What the therapists have looked at is that you can't be anxious and relaxed at the same time, okay? You've got to be, you can either be anxious or you can be relaxed. You can't be both. And so they want to replace the anxiety with a relaxed response. And so this is where the behavior therapy systematic desensitization comes into play. So the first step is that the therapist meets the client and they develop what's called an anxiety hierarchy. So you sit down and you say, okay, what scares you? You can still cope, it's not that scary, but you don't like it, it makes you feel uncomfortable. And you work through with the client to the absolutely worst thing that could possibly happen to them with their phobia. And you develop anxiety hierarchy. Then you need to train the person in deep muscle relaxation. It's really important that as well as having the hierarchy and stepping the client through the hierarchy, you have taught them how to engage in deep relaxation. And sometimes you might be teaching this as you are developing the anxiety hierarchy, because these phobias are extreme and really debilitating to people. And so even just thinking about this stuff can be really stressful to a client. And so, to introduce that deep relaxation just as they're thinking about these things can be helpful. But when it actually comes to the therapy of getting rid of the phobia, what you do is you start by getting the person to imagine the least anxiety-inducing scenario. And when they can imagine that scenario, you then get them to relax. Once they have brought themselves into a completely relaxed position, then you can introduce the next scenario. Again, you don't go past that scenario until the person has reached a completely relaxing state. Then you can introduce the next fear-inducing one. So here's another one, another hierarchy for an arachnophobic. So, you might be saying, right, let a spider crawl on your desk, and once the person can visualize that happening and be in a calm place, then you can move along to the spider crawling on your shoe. So yeah, usually we start with getting the person to imagine the phobia, and really to make sure it works, you really want to be working towards a real stimuli, and yeah, your client works through the hierarchy as they go. So just to give you a bit of a feel for what this might be like, I've embedded a little YouTube clip on muscle relaxation practice, and I encourage you to join in and just get a feel for what it's like to do these muscle relaxation practices, so that when you come to talking about this behavior therapy, you know what needs to happen before a person goes on to the next step in the hierarchy. Pause recording. Why can't I pause it? Pause.
Progressive muscle relaxation. Learning how to deal with stress is a necessary part of life. Everyone deals with stress differently, so finding what works for you is important. Ready to try progressive muscle relaxation? We'll walk you through this easy, stress-relieving activity. Progressive muscle relaxation helps you relax your mind, relax your body, reduce tension, focus your mind, and calm you down. Here's how it works. Tense each muscle group. Hold the tension for 5 seconds. Release the tension. Feel the muscle relax. Try to visualize the muscle tensing and relaxing. Remember to keep breathing deeply through the exercise. Try to focus hard on each step. If your mind begins to wander, bring it back to the muscle you are working on. Let's start with your head. Close and tighten your eyes. Tense all muscles in your cheeks. Tighten all the muscles around your lips. And press your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Hold that tension for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quickly release and relax. Now your shoulders, chest, and back. Raise your shoulders to your ears. Tense your back by pulling your shoulders back. Hold that tension for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quickly release and relax. On to your hands, fingers, and arms. Bend your wrist and tighten your hands into your fist. Flex your biceps. Hold that tension for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quickly release and relax. Now for your belly. Pull your belly button in and tense all the muscles in your stomach. Hold that tension for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quickly release and relax. Moving on to your legs and your feet. Tighten your thighs by pressing your knees together. Pull your toes towards you and feel the tension in your calves, thighs, and feet. Hold that tension for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Quickly release and relax. Breathe deeply and imagine a peaceful sensation flowing from your head, down your neck, into your chest, legs, and settling into the soles of your feet. Repeat this process when necessary until you feel calm and peaceful.
Okay, so I hope you're feeling a little bit more relaxed after that muscle relaxation practice. And yeah, just for you to remember that when we're conducting the behavior therapy, systematic desensitization, these are the key steps involved. So the first thing is that a hierarchy of fearful situations must be created between you and the client. Then it's about teaching the client deep relaxation techniques like the one that we've just done on the YouTube. And so eventually the client learns to associate being relaxed with the least fearful scenario. And And it's only once the client achieves relaxation that they move up the hierarchy and they start facing deeper fears. So hopefully this has given you a bit of an insight into how we can use classical conditioning and learning theories to change people's behavior and support them to lead healthier, happier lives. So thanks for listening. See ya.